Hearing this, the boy became extremely irritated, realizing that a KW was trying to subtly suggest superiority. As the two continued their conversation, Lays and the warriors from MCA exchanged tense glances, building a strong tension. Finally, Aun explained that the letter had been carefully written by the Lord of Mura and handed it to Jared. The boy began to read, and in summary, Horos lamented the previous conflicts between Maya and Kia and promised that from now on they would build a healthy relationship. After reading it all, the Lord of Kriba thought to himself that Horis was provoking him, but keeping calm, he responded to a CRW that let like any man he desired peace. The boy also added that in the meantime he would send the best and purest magic crystals from Caribia, sincerely hoping they would serve as a symbol of friendship. AK replied that his lord would surely be that. While it's true one should draw their sword when facing an enemy on the battlefield in the political arena, it's always better a smile. The knight then realizes that when you hide your true intentions, your enemy becomes careless and complacent, which was Jared's strategy. Finally, Jared explains that the legitimate strike comes at the very end and Leia's shouldn't worry about humiliation or submission. During the process afterward, Jared announces to everyone present that to celebrate the province's rapid development, they would have a grand banquet with the people of Mura. That night everyone was enjoying themselves, drinking and feasting, forgetting about the looming war. As they ate and drank, Heard commented that now that Lacus understood the relationship with Mura better, he needn't worry about the war. In the meantime, laughing, the knight agreed and remarked that perhaps Kia's golden age was truly on the horizon. At that moment, hidden in the shadows, the white-haired assassin thought Jared was being far too careless. Holding a few pieces of wood in his hands, the assassin thought the boy should enjoy his time while he could, as the next cup of wine Jared drank would be filled with his own blood. Our protagonist noticed this and understood what his enemy was planning in his mind. Jared stated that of course there would be spies in his territory, and Top was excellent at camouflage. Without the M's eye, he wouldn't have been able to spot him. Laughing internally, Jared thought that the day the spy reported his findings would be the same day Mura would march toward Kia, and it would be the last day for that territory. Shortly after, due to the poison wine, Jerry began to vomit, and Luhas apologized, saying he should have been more vigilant. With that, another month passed, and on the morning of April 29, 1414, the sound of horses marching could be heard. The warriors in Mura were on their way to Kia to attack the territory. Horgos, leading his army, declared that Kia would soon be his. All around the Lord's mansion in Kriba, silence settled. Lena, noticing this during her training, remarked that the mansion was far too quiet that day. She asked CLO if she knew where everyone was at that moment. However, Ella appeared behind Lena and asked if the girl had time to chat while in the middle of her training. After the girl misbehaved, Ella ordered her to run 20 laps around the field, and Lena quickly obeyed. Ella commented that Jared should have informed her that they were in the middle of a war, and as she stretched, she mentioned that she couldn't relax under these circumstances. On the battlefield, a fireball struck a wooden tower, quickly destroying it. The leader of the warriors defending the tower ordered his soldiers to retreat immediately. One of Horo's soldiers reported that the wooden tower had been destroyed and the cavalry was retreating. He asked if they should pursue those fleeing. Horos told him to let them flee as they were just fools, and he didn't believe that everyone had retreated due to the military strength in the forest. The man added that if he had known it would be this easy, he would have invaded Cryo long ago. Shortly after, his soldiers began looting the area, and after they had stolen everything, Horos finally decided to return to the battle. Raising his sword, the leader of Mura called for all his soldiers to listen and ordered them to advance toward Kriba. Meanwhile, some of Kia's residents were being forced to flee the territory due to the war. An old man and his grandson lamented that everything had been peaceful just the day before, and now the situation was disastrous for the kingdom. On the battlefield, Jared received word that the 4th defensive line had just been broken. The retreating soldier reported that the MCA forces were approaching, and Jared instructed them to move quickly. The boy told Lacey's that if MCA destroyed that defensive position, the territory would be finished, and he urged the soldier to do his best to defend the area. At that moment, Hayes arrived at the battlefield, having been summoned by her lord. She questioned why she wasn't allowed to participate in such an important war, expressing her desire to be involved. The blonde boy responded that he couldn't bring her along, and despite her insistence, Jared explained that the battlefield was a place where even a small mistake could cause someone their life. Holding Hayes' hand, the boy remarked that indeed her abilities were extremely useful on the battlefield, however he couldn't place her in a dangerous situation simply because of her talents. Tearing up, Hayes expressed that she wanted to go because she didn't want to lose her companion, and Jared gently reassured her that he understood. Our protagonist explained that he comprehended her fear as they had been together all their lives, however to protect those who were important. Jared said he had to be prepared. With a smile he asked Hayes to trust him, and she reluctantly agreed. Watching this, Isabella grew extremely irritated and jealous. She then grabbed Hayes by the collar and began dragging her away, commenting that, as a healer, Hayes shouldn't be on the battlefield, but rather stay behind to heal those in need. Hayes and Jared exchanged farewells, and the young man gave her a kind smile. He then informed his soldiers that all preparations were complete, and with that Jared donned his war helmet. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Lou has thought about Kia's well-fortified, geographically advantageous position, but lamented that they had only 300 soldiers. The military flag had been placed in a visible position for most to see, and nearly everything was ready. The only issue left was that 100 untrained peasants had volunteered to fight. A soldier thanked the peasants for their solidarity. In light of the shortage of troops, the man expressed his shame and regret that they all had to face such a situation due to the lack of an adequate military force. Lacaze continued his speech, reminding everyone that Lord Jared had only sought peace with Mura, even bowing to them in hopes of achieving it, yet Mura still coveted Kia. The number of soldiers with basic training had reached 1,200, so the untrained peasants were free to leave if they wished. After all, the fact that they were standing with the soldiers was already a great help. As he spoke, Lays had a flashback of someone calling him to leave. A few days after the death of Viscount by a companion of Lays had said that Kriba was doomed ever since the old lord died, as the new Lord Jared was too naive, but due to his stubborn nature, Lacey's had decided to stay despite everything. His friend questioned how he could say that, especially since Lacey's had been demoted to the lowest rank. He also remarked that Kriba wouldn't survive the harsh winter ahead. Lacus responded that as a citizen of Kia, he fleeing, they would prefer to fight and die on the battlefield. Hearing this, Lacey's felt a surge of excitement. He thought his friend had been wrong in the past, as this winter wouldn't be difficult. On the contrary, he felt an intense warmth. Lacey's quickly ordered his soldiers to distribute swords and shields to the peasants. At that moment, one of his subordinates reported that the enemy was approaching, and Lakas could see them in the distance. However, the soldier mentioned an unexpected issue had arisen, and upon seeing the situation, Lack has become desperate. The enemy approaching wasn't from Mura, it was Lord Batman of Rella. At that moment, Batman and his army neared Kia, feeling pleased that they were so close. 1 month before the start of the war, a conversation between two figures revealed that although they might have fought one another for some time, their intentions were the same. Hose admitted that, to be honest, he wasn't happy about the situation either, but he knew it was necessary as their rivalry with Kriba was greater. The leader of Mura then asked Batman if he too had recently received tributes from Kbaya. Batman responded that yes, indeed, Kbaya had sent a large tribute requesting to maintain a friendly relationship between them and Ranella. Irritated, Horos slammed the table and told Batman to consider this carefully. He exclaimed that Jared, that scoundrel, had started wagging his tail and becoming friendly after being silent for so long. Horos also mentioned that 20% of the hunters had migrated to Kia, and the trend was continuing to rise. As Jared was attempting to shake the foundations of their territories, the leader of Mura claimed that Jared was scared because even though his territories were advancing, they still weren't fully prepared. That was why he was trying to buy peace with money. The bald man explained that he had studied Kia and knew they had only a measly 300 soldiers, to which Batman responded that the number was too small. Horgos reported that this was exactly why Jared had tried to buy peace with money. He believed that by offering a large sum, both MCA and Ranella would be satisfied and decide not to attack. At least that's what the boy thought. Therefore, Koros declared that he wanted to form an alliance with Ranella and had already sent one of his mages to spy on Kbaya. Batman was impressed. The Horus explained that they would become allies to wage war against Kriba. He said that a month of preparation would be sufficient. and after that time they would launch a surprise attack on the territory. Horos explained that they would establish a united front between Maya and Relawit, both invading Kia's flanks and crushing Jared and his forces. Hearing this, Batman, driven by greed, agreed to the alliance. The two shook hands, and the narrator explained that Batman and Horos have formed an alliance with over 3,000 soldiers between them. On the surface it appeared to be a partnership of mutual understanding with a shared goal, but each had their own hidden agenda, both secretly aiming to dominate the other's territory. After defeating Caribia back in the present, Batman addressed the Caribbean forces, boasting about how surprised and angry Jared must be to see their unexpected arrival. However, he added that Jared couldn't say anything because the boy's insolent and barbaric actions have shortened his own life. Even if Jared tried to resist, it would be in vain, as Horo army was already surrounding his territory. Batman also mocked Jared, saying that the boy was foolish to descend his army to the front lines without even realizing there was a hidden path near his own land. Laughing, Batman declared that ignorance was a sin, and Jared's territory was finished. He added that if Jared crawled on the ground and begged for his pathetic life, they might show him mercy. But as Batman watched, the supposed Lord of Crib began removing his helmet, and when he saw who was underneath, Batman panicked. Batman realized that this wasn't Jared and demanded to know who this man was. The spy who had been hiding in the crowd also recognized that this wasn't the real Jared, and began to question where the true Lord was at that moment. Realizing the trap, the spy dashed off. Abandoning his helmet on the ground, he finally understood that it had all been his setup, and before it was too late he needed to inform his master. However, just then one of Jared's knights swiftly struck the fleeing spy, shattering his teeth. The green-haired assassin also appeared from behind, driving his sword into Horo's subordinate, remarking that he was impressed there really was a spy among them. After seeing the traitor fall to the ground, and Knight asked his companion what they should do next. The spy, now realizing the situation he was in, understood that they even knew his identity, and that all the information he had gathered was likely false. At that moment the knight stepped forward to finish him off, declaring that the spy would redeem himself and apologized to everyone with his death. A few days earlier, under a starry night, Lacey's had asked Jared what would happen if two territories sent their forces to attack Kia together. Jared responded, somewhat unsure, that they would probably use the main road. Lacus explained that there were two plausible options for invaders. The area around the main road was easy at ambush, while the lower terrain had a higher concentration of soldiers. Jared agreed, saying that was true, as anyone could see that they had a geographical advantage, which is why Batman and Horos likely felt the same. That was why Horos had sent his spy to carefully inspect and discover a hidden path to attack Kia. Jared tells Lax that if the spy is truly skilled, he has likely discovered the hidden path. The Lord then reveals that this is why he planned to set traps along that path, and the boy pulls out a mysterious object. Curious, the knight examines the device and says he's never seen such a trap before, asking if he could take a look at what it does. Herod steps in front of him, asks him to stay behind for safety. After positioning the trap and connecting it to a man of thread, Jared prepares to activate it. With a quick pull of the cord, in the blink of an eye, a massive explosion occurs, sending numerous projectiles flying through the air. The bullets from the trap even pierced through trees, and Jared shielded himself with a mana barrier. Amazed, the chief of the guard comments that it was unbelievable, and realizing how powerful a bomb was, he remarks that this weapon was extraordinary. Jared states that by using it he will wipe out all the enemies at once, and thus the lambs will not become a battlefield. In other words, that hidden path will become Horo passage to hell. And at that moment the man was marching with his army. Beginning, the captain recognized the voice and tried to locate her. It was coming from hidden in the bushes. Jared taunted Horos, telling him he was wrong about one thing: what they needed to raise wasn't their weapons, but their shields. Jared continued, saying that the general should taste a bit of his own medicine, as our protagonist had prepared something with great care. At that moment the various traps Jared had laid were interconnected by magical threads, and the boy was ready to pull them. Akon felt the mana flowing beneath him powerful enough to make the ground tremble. The mage tried to command his vassals to activate their defensive spells, but it was too late. A massive explosion ripped through the entire hidden path. Many soldiers were hit, their bodies engulfed in heat, sending them into eternal sleep. The K barely managed to defend himself and protect his leader. Seeing the explosion and the smoke billowing through the forest, Batman was stunned. He thought a massive blast had occurred along the hidden path where Koros had been. Batman realized there was a possibility they were at a disadvantage in this war, and that Jared had prepared a trap. However, the man reassured his soldiers that even without MCA's support they still had over 1,800 men. He ordered his vassals to continue the assault on Kia, and they obeyed. At this point, Lakaz was in command of Kia's forces, giving orders to his soldiers. A clash between the two armies ensued, and the battle began. Back at the hidden path, Koros, nursing a wound on his arm, groaned in pain. Akun, seeing this, asked if the man was all right, to which Koros replied that he was fine and asked for a report on the mission. A crew informed him that aside from the 500 sold ERS trailing behind them in the rear, everyone else had been annihilated. Horgos asked about the 2 third-class mages, and a crew replied that Isaac and Odium had also perished. The leader of Mura realized how dire the situation was with all the soldiers he had led and Jared now dead. Lost in thought, he muttered that he never would have imagined the leader of Creo wielded such a powerful weapon. He began formulating a plan with his remaining ally, but at that moment he was interrupted by Jared, who leaped out and charged at his mage. The king of Mura panicked as he watched Jared attack his only remaining soldier. Akun, our protagonist, leaped incredibly high, taking his enemy into the sky with him holding AC by the neck. Cured question why the mage was so desperate, Akun retorted, calling the boy a scoundrel and asking if he had been pretending to be innocent all along. Jared smiled, saying that Akun, and realized the truth far too late. As they continued to ascend, Akun asked how high Jared planned to go, but the boy calmly replied that this height should be sufficient. Without warning, he released a CRW. As the mave plummeted toward the ground, he began to panic, his body spinning uncontrollably high above. Jared watched his enemy's descent and then flew down after him. While heading toward his opponent, Jared activated a magic circle and announced that he was giving 2 choices. He could either use a flight spell to stop his fall or summon a shield to protect himself from the incoming ice storm. Jared then cast the spell, urging Aeon to make his decision quickly. Akon, growing frantic, cursed Jared and declared that the boy was insane. The narrator explained that typically in a magical duel, 2 opponents would distance themselves and exchange a series of attacks as if test each other's strength. After Jing one another's abilities, they would begin launching powerful strikes, and this was the usual pattern. However, Jared had completely shattered the traditional approach to magical duels. Back in the battle, Jared shattered his opponent's shield and caught him in midair, and still confused by Jared's actions, wondered if the boy was trying to commit suicide along with him. But then a crew noticed something below, a magic circle on the ground. Yuta laughed, saying that he now understood what Jared was planning. After analyzing the different classes of mages, are remarked that a 4th-class mage was by no means weak. Even Horos, who ruled Mura, a place full of criminals through sheer force, had paid large sums of money to employ 3rd-class mages to handle situations carefully. However, there were 2 reasons why Jared had screamed in frustration when he first reincarnated. In that world in the past, he had been strong enough to defeat the reincarnated Lich Diluc multiple times. Compared to that, Jared's K form seemed inadequate. He was someone who could only use 4th-class magic. Once regarding Akon, his skills were well balanced and perfectly distributed, making him an ideal 4th-class mage. Though his close combat abilities were lacking in terms of magic, he was evenly matched with Jared. As the explanation concluded, Aun cast a fortification spell and taunted the Lord of Kia, asking if he truly believed he could win midair. The mage attacked our protagonist, could barely manage to defend himself with a mana shield. Akin explained that in close combat shields are easily broken, which was why Jared was maintaining a certain distance from him. With that, struck Jared's shield breaking through and Landing a hit, Jared's helmet scattered from the impact and the boy let out a small groan of pain. Akum continued saying that he had seen through Jared's magic. The spell below was a teleportation spell, a dimensional portal. AKR explained that since Jared couldn't use flight magic to counter any of his strong attacks, the blonde had planned to use the portal to save himself after letting his enemy fall. The mage admitted that while he had initially thought Jared only knew a single 4th class magic pattern, the boy had shown that he could change his strategy, which was impressive. However, Akon boasted that he had seen through Jared's tricks as a result of the earlier attack. Akon was the one falling into the dimensional portal first. Jared tried to stop Akon from entering the portal, but the mage prepared a fire spell, taunting Jared by asking what choice he would make. Akon questioned whether Jared would block his attack or stop his own fall. Then he launched the fireball at the blonde, laughing maniacally. AC declared that if Jared were hit by his flames, it would be the end for him no matter what Jared chooses. Akon believed that the boy would die either way. Jared, however, quickly used his magic to defend himself, pushing through the fireball, but by this time the 4th class mage was already crossing through the portal. Akon celebrated his success, confident that even if Jared survived the attack, he wouldn't be able to use the portal as a CRW fully pass through the magic portal. He declared that once Jared entered the portal after him, he would be met with lethal attacks. However, the poor subordinate